on my list of things I wanted to film. I've had this idea of something that I filmed a while ago, or so I thought, that was basically like best and worst palettes from brands that I have tried most of the palettes, if not all of the palettes, and just basically telling you which one is my favorite and I would recommend it, and which one is my personal least favorite and why I wouldn't recommend that one. If you were looking for a new eyeshadow palette, if you were looking into any of these brands, which is the palette I would recommend versus which is the one that I would like, maybe you don't need this one and why. And I was thinking that this was like just a little while ago, but it was like 3 years ago I posted this video, maybe even more. I had no idea. I was literally in Sweden when I was looking back at this, so it was longer ago than I remembered, but we're gonna dig into it. I picked 10 different brands, and these are not the same brands as I picked last time. I tried to pick brands that A, I know very well, B, I've tried most of their palettes, and C, I have stuff here to show you as well from the brands. And I might actually mention in a couple of these brands, I'm gonna mention a palette that I don't have here in front of me, and the reason is that I decluttered it for one reason or another, but it's still available at the brand, so I thought that I'd mention it to you. Let's start with a mainstream brand, which is Colourpop. I love Colourpop. I have been reviewing Colourpop for years and years and years. Absolutely adore them. Some of these brands I have codes with, and if I have a code where you can get some money off if you're shopping from them, I will pop them up as we're talking about them. I know I have one with Colourpop, and also I would link the things down below that I am talking about, in the good and the bad, because maybe the bad is, according to me, a bad, but for you it's the perfect one. I have to say, if I were to say like which ones do I think have like stood the test of time with Colourpop, which are the palettes that, because I'm going to mention 2 palettes and I love them equally for equally the same reason, which are the ones where I'm like, if this is your color story, start here. These are great, and there are some palettes from Colourpop that they have released that have been incredible, but a lot of them have been discontinued, but these are still available, and that is the Orchid You Not and the Wine and Only. These are in the old plastic packaging. I kind of wish that they would update them because these palettes are so good. These are just immaculate, and if you like these kind of reddish shades, these palettes are such good quality. They just really bring something to the table. The quality is amazing, both in the shimmers and in the mattes. And I will say, this is the Wine and Only, and then with the Orchid You Not, these are just beautiful palettes for fall. Really wonderful quality, and the quality of these mattes especially, they rival a lot of high-end brands, and you can get these at a very affordable price at Colourpop. And I know sometimes with international shipping it's not that affordable, but I will say these mattes are great, and these 2 palettes have stood the test of time. They're still in my collection. They're just really great quality, and I cannot recommend them enough. I wish they had the cardboard packaging, because the cardboard packaging from Colourpop is amazing, but these are still beautiful and I really love them, and I still use them from time to time. I think they are great quality, and if you love these color stories, this is the great Colourpop quality. Speaking of palettes then, or palettes singular, that I think that maybe is not the best, and I've decluttered this palette, and I basically decluttered it because I think the quality was not amazing, and I've seen some people really like this palette, but I did not like the Amethyst something palette. I did declutter it from my collection. It is no longer here with us. I just didn't think the quality was great. I have a couple of shades in that palette. It was so hard pressed that I could not even pick them up with a brush. I had to like scrape pigment out with a tweezer to get them on my brush. I just really don't think that this palette was any good, and I see that it's still available on the site, and I would say, to me, this is one of the palettes from Colourpop I would stay clear of. It looks beautiful. They have other purple palettes that are much better than this one. So if you were wanting a purple palette from Colourpop, I would say just don't get this one. Next, let's talk about Nomad Cosmetics. And for the longest time, I used to say that the Cloud Forest palette was my absolute favorite palette from Nomad Cosmetics. But I have to admit, they just released this palette. And this is the Fuji 5 Lakes palette. The packaging is absolutely stunning, and this is a color story that I really love. There are some cool tones, there are 2 rows of really warm tones, and it's basically just encapsulating this like little cool toned area here. There is one that is more like a mauve, I don't want to say cool tone, but it's definitely not warm tone, more like a mauve neutral beige here that you could tone down the look with if you don't want to have any of these colors. You can use this one with this one, you can use this one with this one, you can use this one probably even with this one, and just tone it down a little bit in case you don't want to bring it and make it too bright. I love that there are light shimmers, there are dark shimmers, there are light mattes, there are dark mattes. I just think that this palette is a great theme, a great packaging with a great formula, and the color story is just really innovative and fun. And with this one, everything just works. It works really good. You also have a neutral shimmer in here, so technically you can do a neutral look in here if that is something that you're looking for. I just think that this one is really spectacular, and I hope that Nomad continues like this, because I will say, I don't know if this is the one they released before, or if, oh no, there was one more in between, and that was the Key West palette. But they released these mini palettes, and these are still available on the site, and I thought that these were pretty meh. I thought that this quality is, I could take it or leave it. There's nothing wrong with the color story. This is a cool tone neutral, then we have a warm tone neutral, and then we have one that's almost like a bluey gray cool tone kind of a thing. I like the color stories of these, but the shimmers are far, like in the shimmers in these 3 palettes are far from the quality in this one. I would say the shimmers in these are kind of subpar, except I think this one had decent shimmers, but the other 2, no. And I also think the mattes are not as good either. They're a little thinner. Something about these palettes just aren't as good as most of their other palettes. So personally, if you are starting out with Nomad, I would stay clear of these palettes. When it comes to Lunar Beauty, I think that most of the palettes, if not all of the palettes from Lunar Beauty, has really good quality. I think the packaging is usually really good. For me, packaging is part of the experience. Like, I don't need packaging to appreciate quality, but good packaging makes me want to keep something in my collection. It makes me appreciate something even more. And I gotta say, this new Moonshroom palette from Lunar Beauty, it really is my kind of a color story. Because again, I love these tones, and you will see with a bunch of the palette that I'm gonna mention is I love colorful looks. I really do. And I love being able to take it there and make it bright and make it colorful and make it, well, just bright capital letters. This one, and with a lot of palettes that I've noticed that I am gravitating towards, I also love these like more murky tones. I'm loving these kind of like almost muted, murky, muddy, swampy tones, or like almost like a muted jewel tone, something that is not as bright. I'm loving those kind of tones, and I think that this palette just really takes it home, like when it comes to the color story. And I think that like Lunar Beauty did a great job when it comes to this palette. One palette that I would say that I would stay clear of if I was buying from Lunar Beauty at this point is the Life's a Drag palette. And it's not because I think the quality is bad, it's just that I think the color story in this day and age is a little dated. It's a half rainbow palette, half neutral palette. If you want a rainbow palette, you can get a better rainbow palette than that. And if you want a neutral palette, you can get a better neutral palette than that, even from Lunar Beauty. I just think that that palette, it didn't stand the test of time, and I think you can do much better from the brand than that one. So if you were buying from Lunar Beauty and you're looking at the color stories, I also think that that one has the least appealing color story, but I just wanted to let you know that it doesn't get more exciting when you open it up, so you can do better. Glamlight is a brand that keeps releasing palette after palette after palette after collection after collection after collection, and I will say they haven't been as crazy in 2024 as they have been some other years. They've still been releasing a lot, but maybe not as much as before. Do think that they are ramping it up for the Halloween season though, and I don't know when you're seeing this video if they've already announced something, but they don't do everything great, but they do have some real bangers in there, and there's a couple of palettes that I just really love. But if you were to get one palette from Glamlight, I honestly would recommend the Rick and Morty. And I know that this one has gone like viral on TikTok, not that I've seen any of them, but I'm pretty sure that that is what happened. It's sold out plenty of times, and this is a big palette, but I gotta say, this is a great palette, and I highly recommend this palette. I think that this is absolutely beautiful, and this is, to me, a more interesting rainbow palette. It doesn't have any of the yellows, but it has different tones of greens and oranges. It doesn't have red, but instead it has pinks, purples, and lots of blues. It also has something that a lot of like Glamlight palettes are missing, which is really light shades. So it has dark shades, it has light shades, it has different tones of shimmers, it has an iridescent shade right here. It just has more variety and depth and just interesting contrast than other palettes do. And if you were wanting to try Glamlight and you wanted to make sure to get the good Glamlight formula, this is the good Glamlight formula. Really enjoyed this palette. I think that this is a great palette and I highly, highly recommend it. If you were eyeing Glamlight, I would say the Kiss palette. I've been looking for it. I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is in my room. I've been looking everywhere. I probably just put it in the wrong place, but you're not missing out. It's not a great palette. It is an okay quality, but the Rick and Morty is a great quality. And it feels like they're made in different factories almost. And I'm telling you, unless you are a die-hard Kiss fan, you don't need that one. There's also this Friday the 13th palette. I could have brought that one out. That one has the same meh quality as the Kiss palette. Again, if you're starting with Glamlight, don't get any of those two. Get any of the other horror palettes instead. Or what was it Friday the 13th? It was two mini palettes. Those are the two I'm thinking about, the two mini palettes. Those were the ones that had meh quality as well. The bigger one, again, I don't know anything about like horror. I don't know what it was called. That one was okay. The Chucky one was good. The Ghostface palette was good. It was just the two mini palettes. And I really liked the mini palettes from Scooby-Doo, but then I didn't like the mini palettes from this. It was just like, it's a bit confusing that it's a toss-up and you don't know what you're getting. But my favorite so far still from Glamlight is this Rick and Morty. It has some really, really fun shades and I'm loving the contrast of that palette. One of my favorite brands is Oden's Eye. I love Oden's Eye's quality. I love their packaging. I love their way of like getting in different textures in palettes. I have a really fun time working with the palettes, which is also a reason why I've chosen to work with them a couple of times. And clearly my favorite palettes are still available are my palettes. I feel like it's not that super surprising for me to say, but I thought that was a little biased. So I went through and I looked at all the palettes that are available and I had to be honest with myself. Which is actually my favorite? And if I'm gonna be totally honest, I actually think, again, going back to loving the murky tones, loving colors, but a little bit more muted lately. I say as I'm wearing this super bright look that, by the way, I did film for Instagram. It should be up. I'll try and remember and leave a link down below. But this is the Stoner Rock palette. And again, this is leaning on that grungy, murky, swampy. I just really enjoy tones like this. And I enjoy when it's leaning a little bit like this. And this one also has a matte white and a matte black. And I really do like that. And I think the quality is really beautiful. I've done really great looks with this one. I enjoy this one a lot. I love that these it's one of those 15-pan palettes. I love the 15 and the 16-pan palette. I think those are a great amount of shades to get in a palette. So I really, really, really do enjoy this one. And if I have to think, and I look back at like which is my least favorite palettes, I don't even remember the name of it, but it's this one right here. I decluttered this palette because it is okay. And I remember at the time where the beauty community was at the time, I was like, this is great, this is fun, this is colorful, this is what I want to see. And I still stand by that. It was a good palette for the time, but it doesn't stand up towards where the indie community is now. And it doesn't stand up first and foremost to where Oden's Eye is today. Oden's Eye's quality is better than it was in this palette. They have jumped leaps and bounds ahead of this quality, and this one is so much better than that one. And I will say a lot of things in the indie community has like just jumped to so many better grounds since then. So if you were looking at the website and I saw that this one is still available, I wouldn't get this one. This isn't the great Oden's Eye quality. This is their old quality, which is decent but not amazing, so I would stay clear of that palette and get some of the other ones instead. I actually had a really hard time because I wanted to include Unearthly Cosmetics because I review a lot of things from Unearthly Cosmetics. I really like the brand. I love the quality, the formula, the theming of the brand. There's so many good things going on with this brand. And actually, when I looked at the palettes that were still available on the site, I had a hard time deciding which is the worst. But I can tell you that one palette that I am so head over heels for, and I just love the color story so much, it's actually the new palette, High Temp. As you're seeing this, I think this isn't the newest palette anymore, but this is the newest palette from Unearthly in my collection. That's not even true because I have one of those mystery boxes for Halloween. Never mind, this is one of the newer palettes. First of all, color story, packaging, gorgeous. And then we have the inside, and I am a sucker for warm eyeshadows. I love warm eyeshadows. And what I really love about this one is that it has a row of those like almost muted colors, and it's not necessarily cool tones. It's almost like a pinky mauve situation, and then just this super warm fire, like cartoon fire, just row. 4 different shimmers, really high quality shimmers. I love that it's a little matte heavy, and I just think that this is gorgeous. I love the size, I love the color story, I love the quality, I love the contrast, I love everything about this palette, and I just think that this is a banger. So if you like this color story and you want to try out Unearthly Cosmetics, I cannot recommend this one enough. I will say that all the palettes that have this kind of a format are really good quality. Some of them are more expensive than others depending on how many special shades are in there. This one is one of the less expensive ones because the shades are very sparkly, but they're not like multi-chromes. So for me, this one just has everything I need, and I think it's spectacular. Again, speaking of my least favorite ones, and again, this is just gonna go back to I don't dislike this palette, and how I reviewed this palette back when I reviewed it still stands. I still think that this is a good palette. And this is the Leather and Lace palette. And the reason why I'm saying this is my least favorite palette from the brand is that since then, the brand has done even better. There's nothing wrong with this color story, but it's not as good as the color story you just saw. This one doesn't have as much contrast. This one doesn't have as much innovation with the color story. The other one is just better. And that's how I feel about this palette. If I look at all the palettes that Unearthly is offering right now, this one has the least innovative color story. And I think that if you are ordering from Unearthly Cosmetics, you can do even better than this one. Not that this is bad, because I still don't think that this is bad quality. I just think that the color stories are even better now. And honestly, like I said, any palette in this format are great. Just that this color story is probably my favorite. Natasha Denona has done 1 million palettes, and especially the last like 2 years, she's come out with a lot of palettes. And I usually always like Natasha Denona palettes, and I usually always like the color stories. But immediately when I started this, I knew exactly which one is my favorite and which one is my least favorite. And my favorite is the Yucca palette. Again, Exhibit A, these tones. I love these tones. I think that the brand did so good with this one. There's a couple, I think 3 cream to powder. So this one is a cream to powder and this one is a powder, so you can like use them together. And I honestly think that this palette has variation within a theme. It has a really light one, it goes really dark. I just think that this palette is so good. Absolutely love this one. I think the color story is unique, and I will say that since this, we haven't really seen any unique color stories. It's been pretty neutral and samey, and there's nothing wrong with neutral palettes. I'm just hoping to see something as innovative and fun as this one in the future as well. But if I'm thinking about my least favorite palette from Natasha Denona, I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna have to be the Xenon. And with that being said, my most used palette from Natasha Denona is the Mini Xenon. I literally used it today. Yeah, I have it here in front of me. I used this matte white in my inner corner today. I love the Mini Xenon. I use it all the time. I think it is absolutely amazing. We didn't need this. Not needed. It's all very gray. It's all very samey, and there's not enough variation in this palette. And I really think that, honestly, I think color story wise, this is a dud. Quality wise, it's fine. There's so many things that could have been a complementary cool tone color to this one, and I just cannot grasp why it's not. Why are you the way you are? Okay, let's go into Bella Beauté Bar. I really love Bella Beauté Bar. They have truly just jumped up to be one of my favorite indie brands when it comes to eyeshadow formulas in these past years. They've done so many things, and when I was to choose my favorite palette from them, I cannot choose one, I have to choose two. And the main reason is that depending on the day you ask me, I will answer Basic Witch or recently Deinfluenced. The packaging of these are meh. I think that Bella Beauté Bar has come longer since this with better packaging. But oh, these palettes are so good. This is the Basic Witch, and I really like about this one is, again, it goes from light to dark. There is a color story going on, but there's still variations within there. You can go in different directions. The stunning formulas in here, the mattes, the multichromes, the toppers, it's just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. It is just an incredibly beautiful palette, and I have done some of the most favorite looks I've ever worn from this palette. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's just the packaging isn't the best. And I feel the same about this one. I think the artwork, there's nothing wrong with it. Is it making me look at this and be like, oh, what a cool palette? Not really. But the color story, the color story is so good. It's honestly so impressive. I don't even know where to begin. Again, it's like, it's a theme, but there's variations of the theme. There are multichromes, there are toppers, there are duochromes. The mattes are incredible. Overall, Bella Beauté Bar makes incredible palettes. The only thing I will say is that I have a tendency of making big palettes, expensive palettes, and I love this format. Maybe this is why these are my favorite ones, because they're a little bit more approachable. With that being said, some of the best shades that they've ever done is in the Secret Garden palette. That palette has incredible eyeshadows as well. And if I were to look at the palettes that they have available right now, which is my least favorite one, I have to say the Sun and the Sea. And I honestly think the packaging of this one is fairly cute. There is a theming going on. They did, I think that this was one of the first palettes the brand ever did, and they decided to re-release this one. And here's what I will say. The quality with this one is really nice. It is their new quality. I think since they chose to re-release this one, I think they should have reworked it a little bit as well. Because I feel like they just decided to do the old palette in the new formulation. And I think that they should have reworked this. These 4 shades are too similar. These 2 shades are too similar. I think that they should have re-released it, but also maybe take one row away and make it the same. Oh my God. Make it the same size as this one. Take a row away and just make sure that some of the shades are not as similar to each other. Because you could have taken away one of the shimmers and 2 of the browns, made this one lighter, this one darker, bam, perfect. Because it would have been a great neutral palette with blues and some purples. Now it's just, it's not perfect. So if you were buying from them, I would say this is my least favorite one, even though the quality isn't bad, but it's just like they have done better. And I think as like general rule of thumb for any indie brand, if you're re-releasing something, make sure you're making it better and that there's actually a reason for you to like re-release it. Let's talk about Nomad Cosmetics. This was hard, but I had to be honest with myself. I love Nomad Cosmetics formula. One of the best matte formulas out there, really truly an extraordinary grippy formula that builds and deepens and blends and just is beautiful. When it comes to color stories, I think that for me personally, I want something that is a little bit more curated. I don't need to have the full gradient in a color for me to be able to do a look. So I think for that reason, the palette that's actually my favorite, that I reach for the most, that I think has the best color story, and I also love the size, is it's called All Done Up. Yeah, I was gonna say All Made Up. That's not true. All Done Up. This is a smaller palette, and I wish Blend Money would do more palettes in this size, so it doesn't have as many shades. It is still a gradient, but it's a little bit more of an unexpected gradient because it is brown, yellow, pastel. There is like, it's a little bit more of an unexpected, the reddish brown going to a peach. It's not as linear as some of our other palettes are. And this one is a really vibrant, like duochrome green as well. It's just, It's bringing something else to the table, and it's one of my most used and most favorite neutral palettes when I'm looking for a neutral look, mainly because these two shades here are absolutely incredible. But if you love neutral palettes and you want to get one that is a little bit different, I cannot recommend this one enough. And I think that this one is truly the best palette that Blend Money has done, because it has the right size, the right formula, the right innovation. There is some twists in here, and I think it is beautiful. The palette that I would say you don't need it is the palette that's the contour eyeshadow palette. I will pop up a picture if I still have the swatches of that one I put up as well. I tried to put up swatches of the ones that I have swatches of, if I have anything saved. Basically, this palette is supposedly an all-in-one palette: contour, bronzer, face palette, eyeshadow. But for me, there is no face shades in that palette for me. I have a light medium with a neutral / golden undertone, and I still think that every face shade is way too cool tone for me, and I have heard that from other friends as well. For me, this is just an eyeshadow palette with bigger pans, and if you're looking for a neutral eyeshadow palette, I think this one is better. I think Dollhouse, that palette, is better as well. And this palette is on a steep discount right now, and I think that's probably by, like, a lot of people felt the same as me, that this wasn't the perfect all-in-one palette because it is pretty cool toned. So okay, this is what I'm gonna say. If you look at this and you think this is a perfect eyeshadow palette, I would say it's worth whatever sale price it is on right now. But I don't think that this is a great face palette. I personally think the shadows are a little bit too pigmented to be face shade as well. This is a pigmented formula, and this palette that I'm showing you here has the same pigmented formula as well. So you have to go in very lightly, and then because the shadows are a little bit more cool tone and super pigmented, I just didn't think this was an easy palette to work with, and it's no longer with us. I did declutter this palette, and I mean, that tells you something about how I felt about it, because I love Nomad Cosmetics. That one was just not a hit for me at all. Okay, last brand we're going to talk about is Ensley Rain. And again, I feel like this one and Bella Beauté Bar, two brands that I've just grown to really, really love because of their absolutely amazing formulas and color stories. And it wasn't super easy for me here either to just decide like which palette is my least favorite one. But I can tell you that I still think my most favorite one is the Lands of Enchantment. So this one is, it's super big, it is. But if this is your kind of colors, going from like cotton candy all the way down into jewel tones and the greens and the mints and the blues and the pastels and the pinks, if this is your color story, this palette truly is something else. The shades in here are incredible. The special shades in here, the shimmers, the metallics, the holochromes, the topper, incredible. The mattes are absolutely astounding. If this is your color story, I cannot recommend this palette enough. It really is beautiful, beautiful quality. Love the looks that I have done. Cannot recommend it enough. Do I wish it was smaller? Yeah. But I also don't think there are any shades in here that are like dupes of each other to the point where I would like to be like, oh, we didn't need that one. It really is a stunning palette, and you can take these shades out and rearrange them or put them into your own palettes as well. I just still think, again, it's just such a unique color story, and it's so well executed that I just can't help but love this palette. And if I'm going to talk about my least favorite palette, I would say that it's probably the Cosmic Dreamer palette. And the main reason for me saying this is that I think that this color story is a little bit all over the place. And I also have the Twisted Tea Party palette, which has a similar color story, but just a little bit more honed in, just a little bit better, honestly, than this one. And again, so if you're ordering from the brand, it's not that this palette is bad. The quality is really beautiful. I just think that this is the color story that they have made that makes the least sense. But again, I also think that this is a palette. I think this was one of their first palettes they ever released, and then they reformulated it to make it their new and better and improved quality. And even though the quality is great, I can't help but think, did we need it? Because this isn't their best color story. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but they have better than this and more cohesive than this and more fun than this. So I would say if you're buying your first palette from Ensley Cosmetics, this is my favorite. But any of those palettes that are like the the Groovy Garden, the Strawberry Moon, any of those that are like the rectangular ones, those have amazing formulations. It is just that I cannot help the Lands of Enchantment. It's just the color story is so perfect. It's just so amazing. I love it so much. I would love to hear if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, what is your favorite or least favorite palette from any of these brands? Were there any other brands you wish that I would have included? There were some other indie brands that I could have included, but I also like, for example, Cosmic Brushes. I could have included Cosmic Brushes, but they haven't done as many palettes, and I also love all of their palettes so much, it would have been really hard to talk about a least favorite one. I also have some mainstream brands that I like. I don't like all of their palettes, but I also haven't tried enough from them, like Tarte or Huda Beauty. But I would love to hear your thoughts about this. Like, what do you think I should have included? And yeah, tell me all your thoughts in your comments. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I will see you soon again in a new video. And bye!